What's up, everyone? Good to see you back. Today we move on to the main part of this chapter. We have the aerial scene and we just want to change it. We want to switch the lighting scenario, which might seem like an easy task. But the thing is, we want to do everything in post-production. No 3D, so that seems like a fun challenge. And spoiler alert, the workflow we are about to share is not perfect, but I think it's pretty close to being one. Regardless, there's a lot of different tricks we want to share with you today, so hopefully you will enjoy them. Let's get into it. First off, there is no tool that can do this automatically, at least not yet. No magic button to press and be done. We need to do something more elaborate. So we'll show you how we approach this, what's possible and what's not possible. At times it might feel a bit weird, so sharing this wider context should help you to digest this lesson. Okay, getting to the business here, we'll approach the transformation in a few steps. 4 steps in total. First, we'll generate a color reference. It will look very similar to our actual image, and that's not a coincidence. Today we'll use the paid version of Midjourney for this, but in the last lesson we'll use Flux in Krea. Next, we'll combine the color reference and our initial image together. It will change the geometry of an image, but with good luck we'll get some smaller usable parts that keep the consistency. Step 3. We'll try another color reference and reference blending, but in a different way. We'll try to keep the geometry consistent this time, but it brings some additional challenges. Lastly, it goes without any surprise, we'll have some color grading, some little post-production, and use creative upscalers to get that nice fidelity. That's the plan here. Hope it makes sense on some level, but anyway, let's get into practice. First off, we generate this color reference we're just speaking about. You can use Flux or Midjourney for that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter which tool we use, so we want to highlight both of them. Okay, so we are here in Midjourney. We go to Retexture. We upload an image and enter a prompt. We are entering aerial view of Mediterranean pristine lagoon. That's what's inside this image. If you're unsure how to describe your image, just ask ChatGPT for help. At the end of the prompt, you can add terms like sunny, night or sunset and you are good to go. Now you can press Submit Retexture and that's basically the first step. This should be enough in 90%. But additionally, we can run extra generations. We'll play around with different stylized values, we'll try the raw mode and see what we can get. After a bit of thinking, Midjourney generates variations and we can choose what we like. It's pretty insane, we get lots of cool stuff, and even though the bay is different, we are operating within the same place. It looks as if someone took a picture near this place during the day. And that's exactly what we want. Something from the same universe, but in a different time of the day. It will serve as a color reference. When we start combining images, there's a good chance it will work much better than the completely random image we have from the internet. You'll see how it works in just a moment. We'll use this one. It's super clean, the colors are incredible. We like the haze, we like how the greenery looks. It's a clear winner. So at this point, we can just download this image and move on to the next step. And the next step will take place in Magnific. There are 2 modules we will use: Style Transfer and Relight. We'll use the Style Transfer first and see if we can get lucky. So we simply upload our input image here and use the reference next. We can enter a prompt, and we use the same that we use in Midjourney. As for the numerical values, usually our go-to in this case is style strength around 60. Sometimes you can go a little bit higher, perhaps 70 or 75, but 60 should be a good starting point. And 90 is a good option for structure strength. Let's see how it does. Beautiful. As you can see, everything magically changed. We get the colors, we get the haze, we get translucency, we get the water reflections and all. That's so awesome. But yeah, it was kind of expected that the image was going to change. So we are just going to accept it. At this point we can make a few more generations. We can play with the creativity a bit more. And here's a collage of various style transfer. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. I'm pretty confident we could transplant many different parts. Those hills in some of the images keep the consistency fairly well. We'll definitely use the water. It finally looks like a daytime, super fresh bay area. So yeah, that's some puzzle pieces we can use, and you can create as many as you'd like when you approach something similar. Moving on, let's switch to relight. This is the step where we keep the consistency of the image, but unfortunately the result will be low resolution. Let me show you. We'll upload the original image again, and we'll use the reference image for the light transfer. We'll enter the same prompt as we entered before, that's a no-brainer. But apart from it, there's a couple of different settings. You are more than welcome to explore with them, but our go-to is light transfer strength pretty high at around 80. This should transfer the colors and keep the geometry of the original, that's our sweet spot. And two more things to remember. I would disable the change background option because if it's enabled, it tends to go wild. And this time we enabled interpolate from original, but after testing it more, we wouldn't actually recommend it. Just turn it off and it should be better. Let's see how it looks this time. This is the result. We are getting exactly what we wanted. We get a lot of things for free. Definitely the contrasts, the colors, that blue haze is there. It's an excellent base to work from. It's not perfect, especially if you zoom in, but that's okay. And if you really want to, you can actually split your original image into half or more parts and run the relight on smaller areas. This way you'll get around the resolution limitation, but it's a bit more work. Fantastic. We are done with Magnific, we can move to Photoshop now. Alright, we have all the images stacked up. We have the initial sunset render, relight, along with all those style transfers. This is what we got, and we hope it's enough to Frankenstein it into a daytime scenario. We'll literally transplant bits and pieces from different renderings and patchwork a different scenario together. Remember that you can color grade, you can mask things out, you can use Firefly. There's also creative upscalers by the end of the road. All tricks are allowed. So let's get at it. The first thing we do is to reduce the opacity of relight to about 60%. The reason for doing so is that the relight layer is low resolution, so we want to bring some details back from our initial rendering. That will create a bit of a problem though. We'll get some sunsety colors back, but we'll deal with this in a moment. We also want to mask the central part, where the architecture is. And maybe the boat, so the detail is preserved and not completely distorted by the relight. Perfect. The architecture is the most important part of the image, so we want to make sure it wasn't affected by any style transfers or relights. Now we can start working on the surroundings. We'll focus on colors first. Okay, so we are fixing those sunsety colors. We'll do that manually and paint over some highlights that became too warm. We are creating a new layer with color blending mode. We can sample colors nearby and paint over those intense yellows. In this particular case, it's an easy fix. When we transition into a nice scenario, we'll do it a bit differently, but more on that in the last lesson of this chapter. But anyway, we are brushing in those colors and we'll use blending mode to restrict the layer only to the highlights. Shadows won't be affected. That's a neat little trick. There's the before and after, and as we can see, it certainly feels more like a day when we have more muted greens. And I can do something similar for the water as well. We have some yellowish dirt that we can clean up a bit. And again, we have the before, where we see those brown and yellows in the water, and after, we see it's more isolated. Beautiful, we are in a really cool place, but we can improve it even more. Now comes a quite interesting step. We'll go through all those style transfer layers and check if we can transplant something on top of the existing image. And already looking at the first layer, I think I'll use the water. It looks much how the water would look like during the day. And just to make our lives a bit easier, we'll transform this whole area into water using Firefly. I let an elevator music play and show the rest of this time-lapse. I'll use some mask from the 3D renderings to make my life a bit easier. I'll start to transplant the water and I think it gives an additional 10% to the final result. Little by little, we are turning into a proper day scenario. Perfect, that part is done. Now we can move on to the last part and turn into Magnific. And here we'll do something interesting. We'll run our image 3 times. There's some hidden logic behind it. We'll use our image as it is and do 2 times upscale. That's the first pass. This will be our consistency pass and we will intend to use it for the more important parts. Then we will downscale our image to 50% and run it twice. Once by upscaling it 2 times and once 4 times. This will be our creative passes. We hope that those blurry mountains around those areas will get more definition. Let's see what we can get. This is the upscale from full resolution, creativity at 3 and HDR at -1. We gave the same prompt as in Midjourney. Aerial view of Mediterranean pristine lagoon, clear sunny day. And this is the effect we got. It definitely adds fidelity, but there's also quite a bit of that unpleasant micro contrast. If we zoom in, we can see the double level of detail, so we need to be careful about this pass. If we zoom in, we can see that those mountains aren't that great. Not what we were hoping for. There's still this low resolution effect from the relight, but let's check over upscales. If we look at the upscale at half resolution, a lot more interesting things are happening. Of course we have some hallucinations, like a monkey getting a human face out of nowhere, but if we look at some details, we don't have the unpleasant artifacts around the mountains anymore. That's why we always do 4-time upscale and let AI be more creative. Most often than not, we'll get something that makes sense, especially when it comes to organic matter. We did another upscale, also 4 times for the half resolution. We went a bit higher with creativity, set the resemblance to -3. This time we got something similar overall. Some elements are a bit more hallucinated, some less, but overall this is yet another pass that we can take from. And I'm pretty confident we can drive the transformation home. Let's get back to Photoshop again. Alright, getting back to Photoshop again. We have these 3 layers in Photoshop and it's time to take the best out of all those upscalers. We definitely need to be careful around the architecture, but there's nothing extraordinary at this point. We basically go through the whole image and manually paste things in. Sometimes we are lowering the opacity if there's this nasty micro contrast. In some places it looks okay, and in some places not so much, so we are extremely careful. We replace the part of this clearing with Firefly, and it looks better right away. We do some final color corrections. We shift the yellows towards green again. And we are done. We can compare and see the before and after. We get the right lighting quality while maintaining the same level of detail. I think it turned out quite nicely. You can always generate smaller regions, touch it up in Photoshop, or generate more style transfers. Taking into consideration that this whole process took about an hour, I think it's quite useful. It's definitely worth knowing about it, in case you need to pull a rabbit from a hat. So maybe these tools will be better in the future, we don't know, but I think this kind of get the job done attitude is a valuable skill to have either way. I hope you enjoyed this extremely long lesson and see you in the next one.